Alright, hi everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit today about my Generac Guardian 8 kilowatt generator. It's was installed at the property that I've owned for about 2 years now. I was initially installed in 2008. Last fall, started having some issues, getting some RPM sensor loss faults. What I noticed would happen was it would seem like the starter was not able to turn um, the flywheel as it should. It seemed like it was struggling greatly. My initial thought was that battery was low because the battery was the original, so it's almost 12 years old now. Um, and um, so my initial thought was that there was an issue with the battery. Replaced the battery after completing a test on the contactor itself and seeing that it was only receiving 12 volts and not, or excuse me, it was receiving 9 volts after manually engaging the starter from 13 that it initially had. So I assumed, yeah, when the draw was being pulled on the starter to turn, the battery was not able to provide the juice needed. Because I was also able to verify that the trickle charger from the transfer switch itself was working. So first up, replace the battery. After replacing the battery, the same situation existed. Starter seemed to be having issues, was not turning over like it should have. Going through the diagnostic, it seemed that when voltage drops like it was at the contactor, contactor is the next thing to replace. It's a relatively cheap part. Went ahead and did that. Next result was that the situation was still present. Essentially nothing had changed other than the fact that the machine now had a new battery and a new contactor. So measuring the voltage at the starter itself, it was noticed that issues were being had there as well. Same situation was present. Voltage would drop, from 12 to 9 essentially when engaging everything to start manually. So replaced the starter then. Initially I replaced it with a eBay, Amazon special, whatever, for about 50-60 bucks. Initially, after installing it, according to the directions that it came with, what would end up happening was that the starter began smoking. Installed it accordingly, but the same situation was present. It just seemed like the starter was being burnt up, and that's why there was smoke coming out of it. So I initially played it off as, okay, there's another issue with the starter, it's junk, you get what you pay for type of situation. And so I ordered a Generac brand starter and installed that. Now when I did that though, through the frustrations of dealing with everything up until the point that I had gotten to, I ended up coming across a diagnostic manual for this generator, and essentially what I had done was exactly what was recommended for the fault that I was having, which was the generator not starting after being engaged in manual mode. But the final step of everything, after doing all those diagnoses and confirming that all of the parts that could go bad were working as they were intended to, the last step is to ensure that there isn't a problem with the motor itself that could be causing other serious issues like ones I was having. And so what I ended up doing was taking a simple flathead screwdriver after removing the starter and just rotating the flywheel itself on my own through the starter port. I know you're supposed to, I believe, turn it clockwise, which is what I did. For 75% of what seemed like an entire rotation, it was easy. It was relatively simple to turn. But for about 25% of it, it was very, very difficult. And at one point, when I was confirming this after making 4 or 5 complete rotations, it became very, very difficult to turn the flywheel at all. So going forward with that, I knew that there most likely needed to be a valve adjustment, or at least I needed to confirm that the valve clearance was what is intended for, which is between 0.002 and 0.004 inches. So I got a feeler gauge, and after taking the cover off initially, I knew right away one of them was way too tight. And so I completed that, got the adjustment to where it is recommended by the manufacturers and the instructions themselves. And that flywheel was able then to completely turn freely the entire rotation. That process in itself was a little bit interesting, but just because it was my first time of doing that. But after completing that, installing the new Generac brand generator, new contactor, new battery, this machine started up better than it ever had before, and that solved my issue. Hi everyone, just again want to go over, this is the replacement Generac starter that I replaced it with, number 0E0601ASRV. I believe it is an updated model of starter versus the original. And right here, what I'd like to show is just what happens for why these starters would fail, or why mine did fail. If you can see on the inside of this assembly here is magnets, and what happens is when the starter heats up enough, I believe it begins to melt the magnets, and they begin to break off and chip. And then what ends up happening is that the starter itself becomes locked up and is not able to turn. And so earlier when I described the smoking, that's most likely what I was seeing when that was occurring. So as you can see here, I got a Generac generator, 8 kilowatt, opened up. Batteries on the right hand side do have the cold pack on the battery itself. There isn't a cold pack for the oil, as I changed the oil for a cold temperature oil during the winter months, I believe 5W30 fully synthetic. Just kind of explain everything I did. Replaced the battery, then replaced the contactor, and then initially replaced the original Generac starter with a cheap Amazon special starter. There's now a Generac replacement OEM starter on the machine itself. And then in completing the valve adjustment, you do that right here, 4 screws removed, and you adjust the lash. There's other YouTube videos where you can find completing that. Relatively simple process, just making sure that you get the necessary clearance that's recommended. The specific model of my generator, 0055010, again, it's a 2008 model year, 8 kilowatt Guardian generator by Generac, running on natural gas provided from our utility company here. Everything's working as it's intended. Just thought I'd make this video to show others out there things to check, because I assume other people that had Generac generators installed around this time are going to have to start replacing some things on their machines, similarly to what I had. And I did a lot of looking around on YouTube and Google and some forums, and there's not a lot of information out there. And an issue that I had as well was that although I do have 3 certified Generac service companies, that will come in and perform service on your machine, 2 of them scheduled times to come out here, then confirmed them, and then never showed up, never gave me a call back. When I called back, they simply said it's going to take months before they can get somebody here. And like I said, I'm talking 50 miles, and so that's 45 minutes worth of driving. And I explained to them I'd be willing to pay for their mileage for them to come and fix my machine rather than me attempt to do it myself. But I guess that's what happens. One of them actually did come, and after I explained everything that had happened, so when a tech did come, at that point I had replaced the battery, replaced the contactor, and replaced the starter with that Amazon one. And so the contactor was brand new, replaced with an OEM Generac replacement. And after his test, He believed that it was the contactor that had the issue, but he did not have the part on his truck, and so he said it would be probably a couple weeks before he could get back. Looking out here, you know, you can see where I'm located is the middle of Iowa. About 3 days ago, we had 2 feet of snow everywhere. Now everything's melted. You see the hose here in the middle of our screen. That's my sump pump drainage hose. Generator is only installed here at this property. The initial reason was for keeping the basement dry. And so generator doesn't run, basement floods, not a really good situation. And so I was not going to wait around any longer, and made it my goal to get this thing running. And I'll go ahead and do a startup right now manually, confirm that everything's running as it should. You can see before, system ready, LED light is on. I'll get this out of the way. And that was a cold start. I did all these repairs about 2 weeks ago. Last time the machine was started. Would have been its weekly test, which I've got scheduled for Sundays at 5:15 in the afternoon. So everything seems to be working and operating as it should. More than happy. Until next time.